Oh, this could be the best thing that I'll ever know. Oh, this could be the best thing that I'll ever know. Best thing that I'll ever know.
Hello. Sorry, I had a thing come in on my phone and it was an update. So I didn't get a chance to clip all the videos I wanted to clip today because I don't want to be ugly about this, but I'm trying out a new video editing software that my husband says, oh, it's so much easier, it's so much better, and I can't figure it out. We spent all day long and we couldn't figure it out. And he said it was easier. So I ended up going back to my old software until I can learn how to figure out the new software. So I said, well, I guess I'm just going to have to use both of them until I can figure out the new one. So anyway, thank you for being here. Please hit that like button. And if you would consider hitting that join button and becoming a member. I don't know what members perks would be yet. I guess it would just be members only lives, but I don't have any of those yet. So, but there might be. I might come up a day when I just need to sit and vent, and that would be the day I would do it, and it'd be members only. But I don't have any members. So I just have subscribers, which is great. And I thank every one of you for subscribing. And, you don't have to, but if you want, you could always, the PayPal banner's not there. Okay, let's switch banners here. Here we go. So I do have PayPal and Venmo. I got Cash App and Venmo and PayPal, but they're all under my email address. So I'm going to put up my fair use disclaimer here thingy on the stage because what I'm using is from the behavior panel, and it's an interview with Chris and Katie Proudfoot. And I already did the first part of it the day before yesterday. And then yesterday was my son's basketball tournament. So I was gone all day doing that and didn't have time to get the video clipped. And I had intended to do the video clips today, but we'll just make it through the rest of this video the way it is. All right, let's go full screen so you can see it better. And what on the behavior panel, what they do is you see a clip, and then the four guys come in and they'll talk about the clip, and then they'll do a replay. And I'm going to try to skip over the replay of the clip unless y'all want to see it. If y'all want to see the replay, just let me know in the comments that you want to see the replay so you can look for what they're telling you to look for.
So here we are, 8 days now searching for him. walk us through that Sunday night that he went missing. So walk us through, we've got so many people who really want to know, okay, how did this happen? So kind of just walk us through that night.
We were out and about that day. We were having a really good weekend. We got home. Everything was pretty normal. He was playing in his room. When I told him to go to bed, he did. He said, "Good night, Mom. I love you." Said goodnight to his puppies. A little bit later, I wound up going to bed. And when I woke him up for school, he wasn't there.
So in your mind, that's usually around what time? When do you normally wake up? Around 6 o'clock?
If you want to know, this is the Chronicles of Olivia. If you want to look it up, the Chronicles of Olivia interview on, I forget which news channel it was. It was one of the Nashville news channels.
So were you instantly thinking something's wrong, or were you like, he may just be already in the shower?
I took a second and walked through the house looking for him in case he'd gotten up and was trying to get breakfast or something, because he did that sometimes. About 3 minutes in, give or take.
One thing I noticed, now I don't recall if it's going to be said on this from the behavior panel, but she's talking about him in past tense. If you think your child is still alive and still okay and going to come home, why would you talk about him in past tense? That's just one thing I caught.
I was on the phone with my husband. I said, "I can't find him." He said, "What do you mean you can't find him?" I said, "He's not in the house."
And so at that point, is that when you call 911, or what's going through your mind?
While we were on the phone, and I was like, is he on the other side of the bed? The normal places he may be in the house, and he wasn't. So I was like, okay, well, hold on a minute. And immediately after that, we called the sheriff's department and made the report.
I ran all over the house, outside, inside. I looked in every closet.
Within minutes, they were here. They responded within minutes, and here we go.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
There's one line in here that got to me when I was watching it, and it's, "When I woke him up for school, he wasn't there." Reminds me of a sheriff in Texas who said, "It'll kill you big enough to die." So some strange wording, but it's an outlier. So let's look into it. This could be habit, the way that she speaks and references this action, and this could be indicative of him being present or being there. I'll let you decide if you feel like jumping to something right away. A lot of people feel good about doing that. At this point in the clip and in the videos, I'm not seeing a typical amount of behavior here that would make me suspicious. And at the 8-day mark, they're still expressing some signs of hopefulness, which is good to see. They're looking at each other more here, as I would want to see. They're more willing to look away from the interviewer and connect during these critical parts of their recollection. And the stepfather, is detailing going through a search of the house comfortably with added detail that we'd expect to see in innocent people. And in a case of somebody who's guilty, I would more expect to see that somebody would not want to go backward from the 911 call to add more details. And if you notice, that's what happens here. They go backwards. So he's comfortable doing this. It's a good sign. And when a piece of a story comes out that's rehearsed and false, the story is, it's super hard to go backward. And often you'll see people are more likely to be guilty, feeling this internal pressure to continue down the path of what makes them comfortable. And what makes them comfortable is something that they've rehearsed. So the father's using comfortable hand gestures that are timed with his speech. The mother is using her eyes and head comfortably to illustrate searching the house. And earlier we talked about the mother's rocking back and forth and that we need to pay attention to it. This part here is where I wanted to look. And when there's a critical part of a story coming out that's deceptive, this takes up so much mental energy to be deceptive that the body would stop rocking to focus the mind on the story. She keeps rocking through it. And what I'll be looking for from a profiling perspective is when the rocking stops. Blink rate, gestures, facial expressions, and movements are all in line with somebody being truthful and honest. One big thing to notice is that there's no focus in either of them on managing perception and exaggerating the sadness and grief. Those are the two big things we see in just about, I think, maybe 100% of these videos. Manage perception, exaggerate the sadness and the grief. We're not seeing those two big hallmarks. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, when I asked him to go to bed, he did, and there's a little bit of an exhale of laughter around that. So a release of tension around that. My guess is, and I'm speculating here, is you've got a male here reaching teenage, more testosterone, therefore more obstinate on the spectrum as well. So that can exacerbate the routines and you know, the sense of risk as well, doing things that are more risky. Obviously, we know that levels of testosterone, as they go up, we see less risk in the world. We'll take more risks the more testosterone that we have going around our body. That's why if you're a male a male will have a propensity on the aggregate to create more testosterone than a female. Not every day, but most days, if you aggregate all males together. And that's why you will pay more for your driving insurance, especially if you're anywhere between 15 and 23, because you see the world as less risky the more testosterone you're creating in your body. So just a little behavioral thing there of we've maybe got a male here that is seeing less risk in the world. And so it's interesting to the mother that she asks him to do something and he does it. So, no blame, though, to the child. He's not a runner. He's a good kid. He's not mischievous. You know, often in examples where we do see parents involved in some way or holding back information, there will be some level of blame placed around the kid. Here, we've got no level of blame. Look, let's just look at the male here. We're not going to see grief in the forehead here because the guy's wearing a cap and he's shaded as well. So we're not seeing some of the areas of the body that we would like to see if we're to see grief, if grief is there at all. I don't know whether it is or not. We may see it in other parts of the face, but we're not going to see it in the forehead here. I don't know why. There's a deep exhale. I don't know why he walked out that door. Deep exhale there. So there's clearly a pause there before why he walked out the door. What's that about? I don't know. I'm not a mind reader.
In my opinion, she's getting ready to tell a lie. She does that movement just before she's going to tell a lie. In my opinion.
But clearly there's a pause for thought about the idea of him walking out the door. Is it a pause for thought about the possibility that he was walked out the door in some way or taken out the door in some way? I don't know, but certainly there's a pause. There's a moment taken there. Greg, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, Mark, interesting. You bring up the whole, we can't see his forehead, so we can't tell if there's grief. But I do see something interesting in the beginning. I see a grimace, kind of a grimace in his face and a deep swallow. We usually associate those with really strong negative emotion, usually. Now, it could be something else. But we just came out of the last video and into this one, so it's related to that last question around the kid. So I think it's still there. His blink rate is really low. I think part of that is his baseline. If we watch, he does a flutter occasionally, but when she starts to bring up so many people, I think this is a hot button for him. We'll find out later. When she does that, his blink rate jumps. It pulses right through the roof. And he goes into internal voice as she's talking and mills his hands. Now, here's where people automatically say that means he's lying. Well, for us, it means something's going on in his head. He's milling his hands. We don't know why. We can see it. We can't see his hands. We know he's feeling stressed, but there's a missing kid involved. Mark, to your point, we don't know their relationship. We don't know any of that. One interesting and odd part of body language to me that does occur. She says, we had a really good weekend, and he's down to his left in internal thought and disengaged with his eyes. And then he raises his head and nods yes. Well, if he's not home, how does he know what that was? Or is he just supporting her is the question. So we'll look for a pattern of that, looking for where he's trying to endorse something versus just supporting what she's saying. We really can't tell. And I agree with you, Mark, when the mother laughs about he did go to bed, he's been defiant. Clearly, you can tell that. And here's an interesting one. I've tried to find out whether he was home, whether he was away at this time. She says, I went to bed. I, not we, I. So interesting. That means, sounds like he wasn't home. She would have to be very thoughtful and use the pronouns if she was going to cover that. And then let's see. If you listen to her cadence slow, Chase, I'm with you 100%. We always talk about these guys managing perception. If we go back and look at the Madeline Soto case, the stepfather managing perception, the mother managing perception, none here, none of it. They're just going on about their business. And he's using big illustrators when he's telling the details of the story. Bray says larger indicators indicate more likely being honest. And then she uses big illustrators with her face. She's going from outside to inside. So those things are good. All those pieces start to look good. Only a couple of cues. Chase, yours, the word pattern shift is weird. I went to woke him up. And then the one with the endorsing with his head movement or saying, yes, we did have a good weekend. Can't figure out which it is. We'll figure out and watch as we go. Scott, what do you got?
Yeah, I woke him up and he wasn't there.
Hello,
I agree. I think
Carol.
that's cultural, because people talk like that.
We're currently going back over the Chronicles of Olivia interview, and it's being critiqued by the behavior panel. These guys are all investigators, and they're like lead detective investigators that interrogate people in crime scenes. But they've got together and they've built a channel. And I don't know, I'm kind of hooked on watching them. And with the Sebastian Rogers case being as big as it is, it's talking about the behaviors. Hello. Please hit that thumbs up, even if you don't want to talk. If you do want to talk, I'm here. If you don't want to talk, please hit the thumbs up. To help the algorithms get out so other people can see my channel. And so I'm trying to see, so what, I can see. Sometimes I wonder if this is why so many content creators don't show their face, especially people on the other side of the Sebastian Rogers case, why they don't show their face on camera. Is it because they would know, we know they're not being honest? I don't know.
I'm from there, not Hendersonville, but from the South in this area, and spent many years, in that area. Know a lot of people in Hendersonville. That's the way they talk. And so I wouldn't think there's much to that. Maybe, I don't know, but that's the way I'm looking at it. What bothers me about this is he said we called 911, and then when the sheriff's department showed up, he said they showed up within minutes, and here we go. So it's this lateral logic thing where you're presented with some facts, and you assume the dad is home during that, like when all that's happening, when he couldn't possibly be home if she just found out and called him, and then he came, and then when he was in, where was he? We found out in
Memphis,
Georgia.
Yeah, but
or Memphis.
But let's also realize just because this is a thing we deal with all the time. If that were the case, Wendy Adelson and that whole thing would not be an issue. You don't have to have proximity to have involvement. So yeah, I think it's fair to still look at him as if, right?
Yeah. So it still makes me wonder. When I first started this, I was under the impression he was at home that night and then went to Memphis that morning. So I figured maybe he's the last one to see the kid. And I went down this road of looking at him from an entirely different angle and couldn't believe how relaxed he was. And I thought, this is a cold dude, man, because he's so relaxed. And so, but there are some things, if you look at it from that angle, you'll say, you know what? I think this guy there might be something up here. But if he's been in Memphis 2 weeks, then they don't hold up to that. So it could go either way. But anyway, back to the lateral logic thing. You're given information, but there's that one little piece missing. You don't get in there and look for that one little piece of information, and you accept everything and move on without thinking about it. And that's what I had done. And I love lateral logic, so I can't believe that got by me. But they do, in this one, they don't look at each other or touch each other either. She's leaned back or leaned forward as a grieving person usually does. That's totally normal. He's leaned back a little bit. That's another thing that made me think about him some. But he's probably, he's not as emotionally involved in this as she is, because it's not his real son. I know that sounds horrible, but there's a big difference there when you're mad at this. You say you don't get along with this kid's father, and I don't know how long these two have been married. May not be very long. Maybe doesn't have a good relationship with the child. So that could be the reason for that. We're not seeing any comparable stress on him at all. He looks fairly relaxed, which makes me think he's so relaxed that he's not worried about thinking, I did this. I've got to watch it. Back to perception management. They're not doing any of that at all. It's like they don't care, because if you didn't do it, you shouldn't care. There's no reason to do that. So that's really interesting. His voice doesn't sound stressed. He doesn't show any upheavals of emotion or any emotions at all, really, as he goes through this. He does look at her a few times throughout the interview, but she never looks at him outside of the 2 times that we'll see them look at each other when they go through here. But neither one has said the child's name yet. Doesn't mean anything. Some, in this situation may not mean anything, but we haven't heard his name yet, except from the interviewer.
One of those tape replays.
Okay, I'm not going to play the replay.
So you said you were on the phone with her. So
Yes,
you were not home.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
I was at work. I'm a tower crane operator, and I was working in Memphis at the St. Jude project. So it's, I have an earpiece in that talks to my phone. I have another earpiece in that does the radios. So when she was talking to me, it was like, what? I was confused. We talked about where he could possibly be, and then we went from there and led to calling the cops, and here we are now.
Within minutes, they're there at the home.
Yes, ma'am.
It was rapid fire. They had cars. They had cars from here down to the
main
road, as far as I could tell.
So what's going through both of your minds? I mean, are we panicking? Is it this, I think he's probably at a neighbor's house, or what are you thinking?
My son doesn't run. He's not a runner. He's never run away before. I don't know why. I don't know why he walked out that door.
I mean, he's a good kid. He's not a mischievous child by any means. But there's answers to questions that have no answers, or questions with no answers right now that we are searching
I
for
think you said
desperately.
that right the first
and
time.
We just don't have that.
Chase, what do you got?
One thing I would really expect to see with these questions that are being asked is what we call target locking behavior. And this kind of pairs in with something called confirmation glance. And this one behavior I've seen in somebody who's guilty every time they have this behavior. And it's typically during 2 super key points here. And the first one is when a super critical question is being asked that can help them to shape their perception a little bit, when their innocence can be displayed. Second is during and just after their answer, to make sure that the interviewer believes it. And we're not seeing any of this here at all. When she's talking, he is comfortable looking at her. And this is more common in innocent people, where guilty people want to do 2 things. Number 1 is keep an eye on the interviewer, and 2, avoid looking like they're influencing or persuading the other person by looking at them. I know it's irrational, but that's what the fight or flight brain believes. Mother and father or stepfather have an equal amount of exasperation with not being able to understand why he's missing. And the mother is comfortable guessing he walked out the door instead of introducing and injecting ambiguity and uncertainty about some course of events. So that's very good. So keep in mind, when we see small behaviors like Greg talking about him grabbing his arm just a second ago, one of the reasons we talk about clusters so much, pointing out one behavior in isolation is next to meaningless. We've got to have these little clusters of behavior for anything significant to come out of it. That's all I got here, Scott.
All right. Yeah, I agree. It's this in this video. It's hard not to go over the same stuff, so I'll try to knock out a bunch of the same stuff. But Greg, I agree with you. When he's scratching his arm, it seems like something's up there. I think all that's happening here is he's trying to find something to say, so he'll have something to say. I don't think he's a big talker when it comes to, tell us what you think about so and so. I don't think he's one to drone on and on. So I think for each one of these situations, he's just looking for something to say. He's just trying to be involved, trying to say something.
Scott, one thing I would add, I think it's really easy to pick a thing and lock down and not just forget body language, the scratch. The whole point I was making is that, and then he opens up. So there's a difference. It's also the same thing why didn't you choose this question instead of that question? Look, people are under stress. They make different decisions. And this is a reason like statement analysis, you got to be really careful with where you assign words to people based on where they're from and all that kind of stuff. Just a thought.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And then when he's trying to look more concerned than he's very concerned. Don't get me wrong, but he's trying to look concerned. And I'm under the impression that because he looks concerned for a second, then he goes away fairly quickly. Real emotions stick, even though he's feeling these emotions. He's not deep in it like his wife. And my father always said, if in a marriage, if one of you is in the ditch, in other words, one of them is down, so got a lot of stuff going on, you can't get in the ditch with him or you'll both be in the ditch. So he may be one of those guys. It's like trying to stay out of it and trying to be I'm the guy here and I'm going to take care of everything. So that could be what we're seeing as well, which I'm tending, it starting to look like that a little bit for me. But he doesn't really even answer the question there. It's just, he doesn't even answer it. And of course,
in my opinion, Chris Proudfoot avoids a lot of questions by not answering the question the right way.
he goes along showing the same emotional transmissions and transmitting the same thing that she has been up to this point. So nothing's changed much for her. She's just showing us all the body language of a grieving mother. Try not to repeat stuff you guys just said. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, just one thing is that when he was talking about being up in that crane tower early in the morning, receives the call, he's got his walkie-talkie in one ear and his phone in the other ear. I kind of thought, wow, that's pretty early to be working. And then I realized Mrs. Atwood out the back here, she's got a tower block being built behind her place, and I can see the crane as we speak, and it's moving around, and that starts as soon as the sun comes up. So I don't know at what time the guy must climb up that, in the dark, which wouldn't be a job that I would want to do any day of the week. So, look, often we don't understand the working times of other people, what their work is like. And it's very easy if they're doing something which is outside of our scope for us to go, well, that's really odd behavior, until we look around and go, for their life, it's not odd behavior at all. That's all I got on that one. Let's have another.
I have a buddy. Check this out. A buddy named Kyle, and his sister, hang on. His sister, Kira, met one of those guys as he was climbing, going to the tower. She could see him from their window. And as he climbed to the thing, and every day she would see him doing that. Make a long story short, they got married. He'd go up again, down again, all that stuff. And she'd see him every day, a couple of times. And they got married.
I don't know whether I see the same relationship for Mrs. Atwood and the crane driver.
Another Atwood incident.
One of those tape replays.
there's answers to questions that have no answers, or questions with no answers right now that we are searching for desperately. And we just don't have that.
Is there anything that happened that day that you think back and that there might have been a reason he was possibly upset or something outside that could have enticed him to go outside? Was there anything that came to mind?
We've been combing over that day and even the weeks before he left, and I hadn't been able to figure it out. He's that morning he was laughing, he was joking. Everyone we were around that day agreed that he seemed like he was in a good mood. He was behaving. It'd make more sense if we'd been fighting.
Or he'd been in trouble, but he hadn't been in trouble. So, I mean, the $1 million question, why did he go? And the other $1 million question is how.
What about social media? Is there anything that, anyone he could have contacted? I understand he was somewhat of a gamer, or what was he? There was a video game he loved, right?
Minecraft. He loves Minecraft. The game that he has is not online. He has the Switch.
We don't, because of how social media can be, he doesn't have accessibility to communicate with folks on internet. I mean, we have a firm belief that we just don't feel that right now he's capable of having that kind of responsibility. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, his phone is locked down, his computers, his gaming. He doesn't have a gamer tag. He doesn't have online capabilities with games.
We've combed every electronic. I mean,
we've cooperated with all the authorities as far as anything they've asked us to provide, we've provided, and still just don't have any answers.
Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, the $1 million question, or the other $1 million question, how? How did he go? And we get quite a cluster of gestures in the face there and gestures with the body. We've got kind of a closed lip frown, which turns up at one side, almost in kind of a contempt kind of way. We've got, certainly it's an asymmetrical gesture by any stretch. Hands go out in a shrug. There's a sideways look on that. Well, so it's quite a shift from what he's done before on how did he go. I would suggest what he's saying here is that he feels that's the question. How did he get out there? That's key. And I guess at this point, it's moving from a search to an investigation. And so I guess he's putting the stress on the how needs to be investigated, not the where is he. Where is he? They don't know where. They haven't found him at this point. We now need to go back and work out how did he leave. And it's maybe, I would suggest the stepfather is saying he didn't leave potentially on his own, or that's a possibility that needs to be looked at. If somebody's to think he's guilty of something, that's an interesting place to go. If you're guilty, to go, let's investigate this. Let's work out how he left, to put stress on.
And that's what so many social media influencers have been doing. We've been looking as a collective, all the social media influencers, at least on the green team, have been, and when I say on the green team, I'm not just saying the people that say Sebastian Strong, the people that only go to certain content creators' channels or anything like that. When I mean the green team is, in my opinion, it's not, I like this influencer better than this influencer. It's Sebastian first. And that's where I'm at. I am Sebastian first. Let's find out what happened to Sebastian and get him home. And there are many content creators that are the same way. Justice for Sebastian. bring Sebastian home. We can figure out the how, when, where, and all this later. The important thing is to get Sebastian home to his father. Get him medically checked out to see that he's okay, that nothing serious happened to him during the time he was gone. Make sure this young man is okay. Get him back so he can get with his father. And that's the important thing. That's the important thing. But many of us have been trying to figure out the how. We've speculated the flashlights in the yard. We've speculated Chris being home during that time, maybe in another vehicle rather than his own, so his truck would still be in Memphis and it would look like he was still there. All sorts of things. Was he carried out with the flashlights? Was he carried out in a duffel bag with the flashlights? Was he carried out did something happen to him and he was put in Katie's car? And then next morning when she drove through the high school parking lot so she could be seen on the camera and she went someplace, and Kathy Bowersox was seen at Washam's, was there a trade-off there? Was he taken to the rental house in Gatlin? There's so many questions that we need the answer to, and we're trying to figure out the how. The why, we can find out later. But once we figure out how, hopefully we can figure out where. It's usually who, what, where, when, why, and how. We're going to have to figure out the how, the where, or the where, then the how. We know the when. It was sometime between 6 p.m. or 6:30 p.m. Sunday and 6 a.m. Monday. During that 11 and a half hours, something happened to Sebastian. Something happened. We know this. We know when. We got to figure out where. We got to figure out how. Once we figure out how and we get Sebastian home, we can figure out the who. And last but not least, we'll figure out the why. When, how, when, who, where, how, why. We'll figure it all out. We've got one of the elements figured out. Okay, I'm going to get through this section of the 4 on the behavior panel. Then I'm going to have to cut it off because I have to get to the pharmacy to pick up a prescription before the pharmacy closes. And I didn't realize it was getting
on that. If I were guilty of something happening in that house, I'd want people to be looking out, not in for stuff. Greg, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, I agree with you, Mark. There's a whole lot of adapting, and when they're asking him any reason, he's feeling awkward, you can tell. But this guy also, if we pay attention to him, most of his eye movement, the entire thing, is going to be down left, where we think of that as internal voice, as he's digesting questions and how things are behaving. I don't think it means he's calculating and doing all that. But he's now moving, and he's got a heavy internal voice, and his respiration's up. I think this is the crux of the matter. What happened to this kid? Where did he go? I think some of what you see in that kind of contempt or twisted face is when they call him a gamer. I think he's thinking, that might be a stretch. He plays a game and he does this. He doesn't have a tag. What would be interesting for me is we all know that people who are on the spectrum, those especially who are really profoundly affected, often can be very good at remembering exact things. I would check the father. He's used the word he has no gaming tag. Father may have his own accounts. Kid may have ability to get into that, figure out how to make contact with people in a way that he doesn't understand. So I'd look at all that kind of stuff. But she's certain that this kid left. She appears to be certain. Now, we all know that when someone is missing, it's a lot easier to think that they left than they were abducted or somebody did something to them. So it's always a way of holding out hope. Chase, I agree with you earlier with his pursing lips when he was saying he's going to come home. We're going to see a little bit more of that later. I think this guy is a very practical, very pragmatic person in appearance, and maybe that's where he's at. But the dad's then goes to internal and emotion as they're starting to say, how did he get out? That's when, Mark, I think you're seeing all that behavior. Like, I don't know. How would he get out of here? And I agree. He wouldn't come into my house and look and see if you can find how he got out. That would probably be the last place you want to go. When he does here's one thing that you shouldn't do. You shouldn't do. When somebody says, hey, tell me whether you're innocent, and you say, we're cooperating with the police. That doesn't look good. It doesn't look good. And that's the one thing, one of the first things I saw about this in the beginning was a little clip from him on one of the news channels that says, we're cooperating with the police. That immediately gets your hackles up and you go, well, we better go check and find out what's going on with this guy. Scott, what do you got?
All right. Yeah. When talking about the father, she says, about the real father, she says he talks to his son on a regular basis. Now, a lot of times you'll see that and go, oh, it's something wrong. I think the mother and the father, obviously they're divorced. There's probably a little rift going on there. So when she's talking about that, she probably calls him his son. Yeah, you come get your son. You do that. That could be, it may not be, but I think maybe that's why she's using
That's a Southern thing.
that instead of saying the child's name. He's adapting with his hand.
I do that. Even I have 3 children that I gave birth to, and my husband has 2 children that he and his first wife created together. And when the only one of my 3 children that I'm close to is my oldest daughter. And when she needs to be talked to, I say, you need to call your daughter. My husband will say, which one? I'll say the oldest, because my 3 children are all older than his 2 children. Hey, H. Davis. Hey, how are you? Thank you for being here. I'm going over the behavior panel, but I'm about to end this, and I'm going to have to come back tomorrow because I have to run. You're okay, you guessed. No problems? Oh, okay. I have to run to the pharmacy before they close. One of my prescriptions ran out and they didn't have it on stock yesterday, but they got it in stock today. So I need to get over to the pharmacy to get it filled. I have a second person in here. I'm sorry, I don't know who you are, but please hit that thumbs up. And I'm sorry you missed the whole show. I do need to quit, but what I was saying is, I'll tell my husband, you need to talk to your daughter. And he'll like, what did she do now, And I'm like, his comment is, he loves all of our children, all 6 of them. He's like, that's a triangle that I'm not going to be the stabilizing leg in. You guys brought a problem, you work it out. I'm not the leg in the middle of that triangle. And he makes a lot of sense. And since he doesn't get in the middle, my daughter and I work things out now, and we aren't having the issues that we used to have years ago. So that's a good thing. So anyway, on that note, I'm going to have to end the stream for tonight. I appreciate you being here. Please remember to hit that thumbs up. And I will see you at 6 o'clock tomorrow. And hopefully I'll have time to clip the rest of this video and shorten it down. Do something nice for someone, even if it's be the reason they smile today. You being here brings a smile to my face. Thank you. Y'all have a good night.